need one of these?
No. Get that.
Okay.
You'll pick a mic and sit or stand, either way.
Going to sit. We got two cripples up here going to try to make sense out of nothing.
I'm recovering from my crippledness.
She's recovering from crippledness. Maybe some of us might be recovering from something.
You want me to fix it for you? The clip thing you got to squeeze. Squeeze the clip. There you go.
There we go.
Would you like to hold it?
Yeah, I think I'll hold it for a while, see what happens. All right, I'm going to talk about nothing, so I'm going to be silent.
Yeah, we're just going to sit here quietly for the next 40, 50 minutes.
When we decided to take this on to talk about nothing, nothing's not a new concept at all. It goes back a long ways. Martin Luther wrote in the 16th century that God creates out of nothing. Until man is nothing, God can do nothing with him. And so if you're going to get to nothing, what gets in your way of being nothing? Something.
Whole lot of somethings.
A whole lot of somethings gets in the way. When I was thinking about this, now what we're saying today ain't the truth. It's just how it occurs to us, okay? It's not the truth, so don't get confused about that. It's only a point of view.
Just based on experience.
Based on experience. When I was thinking about nothing, I sat there and started thinking about a little about ontology and came to the conclusion, using the 12-step model, that when I was born, what was there when I was born? The only thing that was there that I could come up with was we have 3 basic instincts. They were there. We had some genetic predisposition to some kind of personality, because there's only a limited number of personalities people can have. Like if you see a litter of puppies, they're all different right from the get-go. And what we had other than that was we had love. And that was what we were given the day we were born. So if you can watch a newborn, it has the instincts. It has a social instinct, a security instinct, and a sex instinct. And when these instincts are thwarted, the kid lets you know. It cries. Okay? And you do what you feed the child, or you pick it up, and then all of a sudden, when its needs are met, what's left?
Nothing.
Love. Just love is all there is there. Because the child will love its mother. You can see it. You can feel it. All of you mothers know that. You've experienced that. And so that's what we were, is love. Now, we can't create love out of something. We can only create it out of nothing. Now, when we were born, there wasn't much of a self there, was there? Because we didn't have a language to create a self with. And so we began to develop a language. And so we think about this. This is who I am. It's the language that I use is who I am. Now, my language is not my own, is it? I didn't make it up. I didn't invent it. So my language is what other people taught me that it is. You know, I grew up speaking English. Ann speaks Swedish as one of her native tongues. I don't speak Swedish. I wasn't raised there. She was. Now, all of this language that I have is there, and quite often the way I use my language is to create something. And that something I create is quite often whatever disempowers me. So basically, who we are, the rules we live by, are other people's. So as we grow up, we're nothing more than an extension of other people. This is why Sartre said that hell is other people. And hell isn't necessarily the other people, it's the way we perceive ourselves in relationship to other people. And therefore, we begin to curry favor or seek affirmation from other people, and that creates our hell. And who's doing it? And so we continue to do this kind of stuff. And the more we do this, the further away we get from nothing, because we have become something. And we think that's something special, right? And so that's what we become, is ourselves as extensions of other people. So we grow up being rather codependent to start with, don't we? Okay? And so what are we going to do about that? It creates a lot of misery, a lot of anxiety. If you live in your life trying to follow other people's rules and trying to be other people, all of a sudden you start feeling anxiety, and you don't realize at that point in time that that's what you're doing, that you're being irresponsible. So most of you get into a program because whatever you're doing isn't working. And the program talks about nothing in a roundabout way. It talks right there in the 5th chapter of the big book that many of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, but the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Jennifer talked about that this morning. If I let go of my old ideas, I can get back to nothing right where I started. Okay? And then I can create something out of that space, which is the love I had in the very beginning. I come from a religious tradition that defines God as love. I had that the day I was born. I just got over it. You can say something.
I'm enjoying what you're saying. I was just thinking about how when I first got into recovery and really did the work, what I walked in with was a whole bunch of old ideas, a whole bunch of something, whole bunches of somethings that just filled my being, my everyday living with chronic, need to control, need to predict what was going to happen, need to keep things a certain way at home, a need to be with my husband and my children, and looking at the big book and what the steps have taught me. It's like in the beginning I had to be willing to stop being the one making all that meaning up because it was not working for me. I mean, every bit of the something that was there, I'd either inherited it or made it up myself, but it was all totally disempowering, or I wouldn't have gotten in recovery. And then, so the third step was so helpful to be able to say, okay, I'm willing to have something other than me run this show. I've done a pretty shitty job. The best I could do was not enough to give me the life I needed and wanted. And then, with the fourth step is taking a searching and fearless moral inventory. It's like the cleaning out the wreckage of the past, is how you hear it described. And the wreckage is the something that's in the way of the space of nothing. And, who here, when you hear the words "I am nothing," do you think that's negative? Raise your hand if you I am nothing. Yeah, it sounds negative, right? One day I put that up on Facebook. You should have seen the comments that people wrote back to me. They were like, oh, God, that doesn't sound like you. Are you okay? There's something wrong? What's wrong? There's nothing wrong. If you break the word up, nothing, into two words, no thing, you consider, I am not a thing. I am not an object. What I am is what I create myself to be now, newly, and every day. And I do that through this work, through God. I mean, my higher power I call God. And my ability to turn my life over. And can I tell the story real quick about what happened?
Yeah, I'm going to tell one too.
Okay. You want to tell yours first?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So, I'm like, I don't even know, 8, 9 years into my beginning of my real recovery. And I still do this. So it's not like there's this place you're going to get to, or I'm going to get to, or any of us are going to get to, where we don't make up disempowering stories and react to them, okay? And I'm a therapist, and I help other people do it, but I still will do this. And I did last week, got really codependent with my kids. It's really hard to break codependency with your kids. You find that out? I mean, it's easier to break codependency with everyone but my kids. Children will test. One of my children was testing what would happen if he told lies and wasn't honest. And I just went nuts. And I tried everything I could to control the situation. I threw a whole bunch of something at it, and then that didn't work, and he got worse. And then I finally, in my suffering, called Ed. And Ed says, what he did really was walk me through the fourth step. He helped me to see how much fear I was in, and that I was creating so many stories in my mind about what this meant for the future for my child, what it meant for our relationship, and whether I'd ever be able to trust him again. I had my kid in jail, didn't I? I had him in prison in the future. I had a story. It was like, he's turning it out just like these other people in my family. I know exactly where this kid's going. And he helped me to see all of the something that I was putting, all those stories, I think Brenton talked about, the resentments of the past. So Ed helped me to see that. And once I saw that, and I saw that I was really dooming my kid to that future if I kept reacting and if I kept relating to my kid the way that I was, then I asked God to take it from me. He immediately did. Steps, I was willing, 6, and at 7 he took it. And then what was left was for me to make an amends to my child. And so I was able to see the actions I had taken that were out of my fear and my resentment. I went back and I admitted that to him. And it cleared the path. It cleared away the space between us. We'd been in this power struggle with each other, this, who's going to win. And he even admitted to me that he had been rebelling. And he was like, well, what if I don't ever give up this rebelling stuff? And I said, well, you know what? You can choose that. That's your choice. And kids who continue to lie to their parents and continue to be dishonest don't usually end up living with their parents. And that would be really sad. And then I painted a new picture for my son in the space of nothing, because I'd owned up to I told him I'd been a jerk. I told him I'd been controlling and manipulative, and I'd been trying to fix and change, and I'm not going to do that anymore. And then I said, but now let's talk about a different possible future for you. And then we, talked about the birthday parties and being tucked in at night by his mommy and daddy and being able to wake up in his own bed and graduate from his own schools. And wouldn't that be better? Wouldn't that be a better life for you? You can choose it. You get to choose it. I handed it over to him. But I had to get to nothing first. I had to get to nothing not only in my own head, where I was making up all these stories about my kid, but I also had to get to nothing with him. I had to own my part in it, which is step 9.
Yeah, the first time I got to nothing was when I hit my codependent bottom in 1985, 86, somewhere in there. And the experience was so devastating to me that at that point in time, there was nothing there left. And I really understood what Nietzsche meant when he said, if you stare too long into the abyss stares back. There was nothing. I had no resources. I had nowhere to go. That's when I began working the steps in earnest. And I realized that when I get to nothing, I'm fully present because there's nothing in the way. Because to get to nothing requires that I give up the illusion that there's an I that thinks. And when that illusion disappears, then I can be perfectly present because my I is hooked up to my thoughts. And if there is no I, which is an illusion anyway, that there is something, you just have thoughts. It's not you have a thinker thinking them, it's just thoughts running around in there. They're old ideas, all thoughts old, as Krishnamurti says. And so I can't create anything out of that. I can create something out of nothing. And sometimes we struggle and we struggle and we struggle to figure out, to understand and all this stuff. And then when I finally understand, nothing's changed because I never got to nothing. And so nothing happened. And so until I get something new in my head, I'm going to run on the same old crap. The same old crap is what disempowers me. Because when in my head, in my brilliance, I'm always in the future or in the past, my life's happening and I ain't there. And so then whoever I'm thinking about in the future or the past is running me, and I'm in hell again, as Sartre said, because I'm missing the whole point of my life, which is now. As Alan Watts says, this is it. There isn't anything else. But how we loathe that. You can't love tomorrow or yesterday. But if you're damn lucky, you can get there today.
Yeah.
But you get there out of nothing.
And so you can only love now.
Yes. And it's really important to understand that loving is a state of being. It is not a something to be sought after. It is there. All you have to do is clear away the crap and it shows up. That's been my experience. It's just there. It was a gift to me before I was born. And so, but we cover it up so much with our old ideas. And by taking other people's inventory, by making them wrong, or making ourselves wrong, or criticizing this, criticizing that, complaining about this.
Getting to be right about something, and that's wrong.
Getting to be right about something, and all this crap. And we run around and we live our lives that way. Have you ever noticed how much you complain? And we don't, it's so automatic that we don't really realize that every single one of our complaints disempowers us, and we're no longer present, and we can't get to nothing. We're too busy complaining about the state of the world, the state of the politics, or whether Ann's going to fix my breakfast in the morning or not.
I think complaining is like, it's a form of an addiction, really, because we get so attached to the ideas we have and the meaning that we give to something that we assign, and we take the payoff of not having to own whatever we can do about the situation.
Yeah, and all our complaints are driven by our character defects. They're all self-centered, dishonest, fear-driven, and inconsiderate. And then we are something then, we're right. And we'll never get anywhere out of being right. You will not be able to get to nothing there.
We might get an agreement from people.
You might get an agreement. Yeah, and that's really good, so we can keep our complaints going because so-and-so agreed with me.
It doesn't change anything.
Doesn't change anything.
No.
I'm still disempowered. And then I've enlisted other people in my own disempowerment.
And resentful and fearful.
And then I become resentful and fearful. And as Jerry said, you know who's doing it. It ain't them, it's you. Yeah. Helen, you had a question?
I was just going to make a comment. It seems to me that it's something to talk about, that we... It's something that all our complaining gives us something to talk about, and we want to talk to other people, and that's what we think of, the bad stuff. I don't know why, but I think that's true.
Almost like a way to try to connect, but it's like dysfunctional. Is that what you're saying?
It's a dysfunctional way of
connecting with other people, but we're doing it out of our dysfunction rather than our nothingness. So when we're in a space of there's no thing there, there's no ideas already there, then you can connect for real with people, right? You guys have that experience of you got to step 9. You cleared away all the wreckage. There was no more guilt, no more shame. It got taken from you. And what was left was to be of service to others, right?
And love.
And love, yeah.
But, I was sitting there thinking one day, I'm getting really old these days because I'm 76 years old now. And I said, what old people do is sit around and share their physical complaints with each other. And I says, damn, I'd just as soon be dead. And so I refuse to do that. If anybody wants to hear my physical complaints, I'll tell them in private. It would be, I could have a nice session of disempowering myself, focusing in on my physical condition and become totally self-centered and preoccupied with that.
And not be of much service.
And I am no longer present, and I can no longer be of service to anybody because I'm locked into self again. And so it might help if you all just do it as an exercise and just to see how often you complain and how disempowering that is. Because when you're complaining about something and then you can't get to nothing.
Especially if you go and try and find other people who agree with you. Because now you're just adding more to the space rather than taking away.
And so I think this is the purpose of letting go of your old ideas, especially not so much all of them, it's just the ones that disempower you, like the ones you start with, what if? Or if only I had, or if only I hadn't, or I should or ought to, or why doesn't he, why doesn't she? All of these things prevent you from getting to nothing, and you're acting totally out of your character defects because you think you're the center of the damn universe and people ought to do things the way you think they ought to.
There's classic Ed Mackie. I just had to put that in there.
I swore I was going to clean up my act today.
Please don't. We appreciate you just the way you are, Ed.
Somebody's talking to me about the last one I did here and I sat there and talking about masturbating when I was a kid. So I'm trying to be halfway clean today.
That was just your sex instinct, Ed.
I'm trying not to get over the top with my sex instincts today.
So, what does anybody have any questions about what we mean by nothing? Why are we talking about nothing in recovery? How it relates to recovery? Or how about experiences you've had with it? Can't hear you.
I'm new in the recovery, and I want to know what you're talking about when you're saying recovery. I mean, what's the word we are? Nothing.
When we say nothing, what do we mean? Well, it's like there's all of these thoughts, all of this meaning that we have attached to life itself, right? Like whether it be thoughts about me, whether I'm good, bad, ugly, pretty, fat, skinny, there's a million of them. And then about my children, or about my friend Ed here, or about y'all, or about the world itself. There are these thoughts and these ideas that have literally been like real for me, not like a thought. I haven't thought of it like they're just thoughts. I've thought of it as it's the truth.
Well, I may have a thought, and my thought is it's in my past. So that's be a nothing to me and just think about the future.
I couldn't hear.
My thought in me is my thought in the past. Could I make that be a nothing and think about the future?
Yeah, if you're in the now, there's an empty space for you. It's almost like, think of it like a canvas, right? Like an artist starts with an empty canvas to create onto. In the present, we have the opportunity to create something. We can have a great life and empowering experiences. We can really keep having disempowering experiences. In the past, all those thoughts we've had are from the past, and they're going to disempower us. We can hold on to the ones that empowered us. If we're in the future, fearful, we're not living in the present either. But if we're right here, right now, what we have is an empty, open space to create stuff with my higher power's help. Does that make sense?
Joy can only be created now, in the moment. It can't be created tomorrow or yesterday.
So if you're waiting for someone to die in order for you to live the life you really want, it ain't going to happen. Because even after they're dead, you still don't know how to live.
Or waiting for the right moment to do something. This is it.
This is it.
I'm not sure quite what my question is, but I think for me, when I trace fears down to the root, what I'm really afraid of, sometimes nothingness, that feels very frightening to me, the idea of nothing, and my root fear is often being left alone, or I kind of get this image of like floating in space with nothing to ground me, nothing to hold on to, and no one to be with. So, and I think for me now, that fear is showing up less often because I have developed a relationship with a higher power, so that feels like maybe where my safety is coming from. But can either of you speak to how for you nothingness has become less frightening, if it ever was? What makes you feel safe with nothingness?
Okay, if you get to nothing, nothing is not something to fear. Okay, it's something that's something to fear because your fear is all about where you're not where you are.
All our fears stem from the meaning we have attached to the word nothing, in fact.
Yeah, and so if you ever get to nothing, then what that creates is a space for love to show up in your life. Wouldn't that be something really cool? Mm-hmm. And have that as your state of being instead of all this thinking about the future, past, all that. When you can be right here, right now, totally present and totally aware. And then you're just limited by the physiology of your vision when you can get there.
I used to have a terrifying feeling about being alone and getting to this, what do you mean nothing, emptiness, no thought, no nothing.
Yeah.
And then when I got there, when I was willing to, I realized that everything I'd created so far had only gotten me, into the rooms of the 12-step groups. Right. And so I was like, well, I'll trust for a little while and see, you all kept telling me this works, And what I discovered was that when I could turn it all over and have an open space rather than everything I had held on to up till that point, I was filled with love and compassion, joy, peace. There was this openness that had not been there, and it's probably the openness of the newborn baby,
And when you get to that place, you will feel whole and complete with nothing missing. Bob.
I would like to illustrate what you all were just saying.
Go for it.
And this happened 2 weeks after my divorce became final. But the trip had been planned for some time. And having completed the divorce process, I felt this great sense of release and freedom. And I was going to be visiting 3 women with whom I had had a relationship of some kind in the past. One of them I hadn't seen in half my lifetime. Another one I hadn't seen in 15 years. And another one had been my first sweetheart from graduate school 50 years earlier. And before I left, Karen and I were talking, and she said, you know, something Ed said. Think about this. If you go with no expectations, you open a space for something to happen. And I did that. Thanks to my recovery and my spiritual practice, I was able to go, in each case, with no expectations. And I'll just tell you a little bit about one of them. Jackie came to Berea College as a non-traditional student at the age of 40, and I was about 50 at the time. And after she took my classes, we chummed around, and we enjoyed each other very much. In this trip, I brought with me all the work of recovery and this notion, which I accepted, that I would go to visit her with no expectations of what would happen. She had been following her own recovery path. And as it turned out, where each of us was intersected. And the few days that we were together were absolutely wonderful. Neither of us had any notion what was going to transpire. But it was beautiful. We were totally relaxed with one another, totally free, and are talking with one another and expressing our feelings with one another. At one point, one morning, she turned to me and she said, "You have brought joy to this house." And to me, that was the most beautiful word I heard during the whole time we were together. And there were many beautiful words we heard. But that sense of both of us being joyous together was very beautiful. And that is a time that will always be deeply embedded in my heart. Thank you.
Yes, you approached her from nothing.
Awesome.
From nothing.
Yeah, I'm Rich.
Hey, Rich.
Hey. I don't like that word nothing, Ed. That connotation is just negative.
That's what it sounds like to
It does. I mean, here you are, you're in the action of doing something by trying to do nothing. And
It's kind of a paradox.
just the whole, it is. It really is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the meaning and the significance
Yeah.
that you've given to the word nothing that has you not like it. So there's a space that's like the language Ed was talking about before that defines nothing for you, and it is something that you perceive as negative.
I guess so, yeah. But I mean, with just in physical sense, with nothing there, means the nothing of value. So to me,
Who says?
Who said that there was nothing of value there? I said that love exists in nothing. That's valuable.
I mean,
that
really,
is
anything.
valuable. So you say that.
Anything is possible.
Anything is possible
in the
from nothing.
space of nothing. So we could put more crappy somethings into that space if we, I mean, we're all pretty damn good at that, right?
Yeah, we can put a lot of crap into nothing.
We can even define nothing as bad, and then we wouldn't want to
Well,
get
then
there.
we can't go to nothing because it's bad. Don't want to go there.
See, what I was most afraid of was I'd get there and there really would be nothing. But what it is that it's like the universe doesn't like a vacuum. I don't know who said that, but who said that? I can't hear you, but Aristotle said that. So when I got there, what you discover is when you get to know thought, when you know, my way to get there is to meditate or pray. And when I got to a place where I didn't have to name things and have words to describe stuff, and it's fleeting, these moments, but when I can get there, and I get there through my surrender process, then I actually have more power than I ever had before, because a power greater than me takes over. I'm not the center of the universe, as this man has taught me. And now that I get that, and that there's a center of the universe that actually has a lot more power than I have, and it creates my life so much more incredibly beautiful than I ever could have by myself. So I'm willing to keep going back there now, but you know, you got to at least have that willingness to let go first.
I'll tell you another thing that gets in the way of nothing is I want or I don't want.
Yes.
That really sticks you because you're no longer here.
Mark.
I'm not sure how I'll phrase this, but I like the idea of nothing, and the questions like, you know, who am I, where did I come from, where am I going, and having had a spiritual awakening, it's semantic, it's words, it's understanding what we mean by the words, but I guess the bottom of my question is the meaning. You know, what gives our life meaning? And so for me, in my recovery, or in my life, I feel like there's this guy I'm trying to get away from, me, to get to something that's more me, that love maybe, or that spiritual
authentic.
Awakening. Or So to me, that gives me my life meaning. So I like the idea of nothing, have played with it a little bit, but it just seems like, God, please save me from myself, you know, type of thing.
Yeah.
So I guess you're not saying that life doesn't have meaning.
Well, it doesn't.
We haven't really gotten into whether it has meaning or not.
Well, I guess it's a personal choice.
I think what I can only speak for me, I'm saying that we give life meaning. We make the meaning in life.
You make up whatever meaning you want to make up,
So
but inherently there's no meaning.
There's like this big open possible potential space called life, and then human beings create meaning inside of that space. And a lot of us have experienced and created really disempowering meanings and inherited it and lived through it as children and, you know, recreated over and over again.
Well, as we learn in recovery, or as I'm learning in recovery, it's an individual growth process, and it's an individual journey. For me, life does have meaning, but that's my own personal
It's
interpretation.
whatever you make it mean.
That's your meaning.
But that's my own journey,
That's okay.
I guess. Is
If that empowers you,
that nothing
go with it.
empowers me.
But here again, if I have a meaning in my life is defined by, as Helen was talking about, the 12th step. What can I contribute to the well-being of others? That's the meaning that I derive. I derive my sense of meaning from that. Huh?
Empathy. Oh, that type of thing.
Yeah. In the face of meaninglessness. Yes, but inherently life.
Well, see,
Right.
the idea is
Right.
that you put
You can
meaning
create
in the
anything
space.
out of nothing.
That's right. I want to share one other story, just to kind of pull it back around to the story I shared at the beginning about my child. So that happened on Sunday of last week, okay? And when I called Ed, and I was all upset, and he talked me off the ledge, and I was still kind of teetering on it when I said to him, I'm not going to be able to speak next Saturday. I'm not going to have anything to share. I won't know what to say. There's no way I can speak on any topics with any sort of, expertise or anything. And he just laughed. He said, yeah, you'll be there, because between now and then, something will happen. You'll get back to nothing. You'll be able to create something, and then you'll have a really great story to share. But I had put a lot of meaning between, what had happened up until now in that space. You were there too, Jen? Yeah. Yeah.
Marcus.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I didn't think I was going to be able to make it here today. And I thought, well, I know a lot of these people who are talking, so I probably already know what they're going to say. So it's probably not the end of the world if I don't make it here today. But I'm really happy I'm here today because I would have missed a lot. And thank you, Joe, for organizing this. You did a wonderful job. I've been wrestling with this concept of nothing, very lightly wrestling, for an awful lot of years when teachers made me read Sartre and Camus, the existentialists who seemed obsessed with nothingness and absurdity, which y'all didn't address, but maybe that's a topic for later. But I never got a hold of it, and I've heard you, Ed, speak on nothingness before, but almost as a one-liner, not like a joke, but as a simply stating something that's an obvious truth, but which, of course, was not obvious to me, so I couldn't get a hold of it.
And it may not be true.
Right, but I wanted to see if I understood you correctly today. You said to me what was the most brilliant and simple thing ever, which was we're born with nothing, and if our basic needs are met, our security, social, and sexual instincts are met, then we're left with nothing but love.
Right.
Which is to say we start off with nothing but needs, essentially, and the product of having those needs met is love. And it occurred to me that the product of not having those needs met is resentment.
Yeah.
And for most of us, that would mean we start life with negativity, with resentment. And if we start negatively, then obviously the 12 steps tell us that if we clean up the wreckage of the past, we go from negative back up to zero where we started, and we get a new chance.
And zero is nothing.
So zero is nothing. So we literally start with zero, we get negative, and then we get
And then
rid
we
of the
got
negative,
something.
and we're back to
We're
there.
putting something in the space there that creates a space for love to disappear.
Yeah, and that just seems so simple and brilliant that I wanted to tell you thanks for that. But I also wanted to ask that question about these things that I haven't understood, and I don't know how broad other people's interests are in these things, but existentialism, the writings of Sartre, Camus, those people, are usually associated with atheism. I understand there are Christian existentialists, but that's another concept I don't get.
Paul Tillich was one of those.
Uh-huh. So maybe you can explain that, but I wonder how your concept of nothingness compares to secular humanism, atheism, so forth, because that's what I had gotten out of the writings of those people, even though they had so much more. That's what I got, essentially. Heaven and hell are here on earth. Your life is what you create. There's no heaven out there.
Well,
There's
that's
nothing
Sartre's
inside.
position.
Yeah.
That man is what he creates himself to be, and for that he's responsible for. There is no God to be responsible for him. That is Sartre's position.
Now,
And
if that empowers you.
that's the atheistic school of existentialism. There is a school of existentialism that is not atheist, personified perhaps by Paul Tillich, who redefines God as the ground of being. I redefine that as the ground of being is love. And that's not an atheistic position.
There's earlier when Helen had us take a deep breath, clear our thoughts, and look at the person next to us, there's an exercise very similar to that I've done in another program, and you actually stand with someone and do that for about 45, 50 minutes straight. And you're supposed to do that and notice all the something that happens during it. Notice all your thoughts that come up. Notice all of the ways you feel self-conscious. Notice, what your body feels like. And each time something shows up, the assignment is to let it go. So notice, what are you thinking about right now as you look at that other person? And when you notice it, let it go. Something else comes up, notice it, let it go. Until, good or bad, anything, everything. And eventually what I discovered was that between me and that other person, it was like once everything fell away, the only thing that was left was that experience of caring and concern and love for this other person who I didn't even know. But there was love there. Totally, we name it love. You can call it whatever you want. Joy. There was a feeling of connectedness that was there. And I didn't put it there either. When I let go of everything else, it was present. And that's what we're talking about today.
And this is why the concept of nothing is so important. It's not some place to be feared. It's because possibility lives in nothing. That's where you get possibility from. It doesn't come from your old ideas, does it? Old ideas just generate more old ideas and more ideas, because you'll notice if you're in these rooms, the chances are pretty good that you're thinking the same old crap over and over again. And nothing changes. And so you think some more old crap and nothing changes, because all thought's old. And if I'm focused on all that old stuff, I haven't created a space for anything new to come in. That's one of the things that we do with taking an inventory, surrendering our old ideas.
Just to comment on what you're saying.
Yeah.
It seems like what I'm getting from what you're saying is that if you can look at that person and all this drops away, to me, call it ego, call it whatever you want to call it, but that's what I'm trying to get rid of. And that's so that I can get to that nothing, that you could say it's something, but nevertheless, for the sense of the conversation, whatever it is, nothing, something, it's there, and you didn't create it.
Yeah, it was like a
And
field
so
of
it's
possibility.
like my interpretation, right or wrong, of what you're saying is that there's something left that's valuable.
Yeah.
And let's call it nothing.
Sure. Pat's over there.
I'm over here, Ed. One of the things that, when I first got into the program, hearing people talk about having nothing in my head, I couldn't do. It's like my expectation was I was supposed to jump from step 3 or 4 or 5 to step 12. I think you got to get to the point where I have to let go of the resentments and let go of my fears, everything in the past and everything in the future, to get to that space. So somebody finally said, it's okay if you can't get there today.
Sure.
This is a growth process.
It's a growth process.
That's why there's 12 steps, not just one.
Absolutely.
And realize that all of your fears and resentments are driven by all of this old shit that's in old stuff that's in your head.
So I got to get rid of the old stuff first, and that takes
and then
a little time.
that is the way that you begin to get there.
Yeah.
And it takes place over time. It doesn't get there instantly. You don't want it to get there instantly. It hurts.
Absolutely.
If it gets there real instantly, it's really terrifying.
Well, it didn't work. No, it doesn't work.
Hey, when you were talking, especially Mark, I'm Ann, by the way.
And
What I was thinking is we're looking so much at what is this nothing, and how about just say nothing in the way?
Well, that's good, Ian.
Hey, I'm Walker. Something that you said, Liza, that really, I guess, kind of helped me start to accept the word nothing as not something negative is a way that I have learned to deal with disease is recreating the word as dis-ease.
Yeah.
Because then it's something I can approach. And you, when you said nothing becomes no thing, it really makes it something that I can relate to because I am no thing. I am many things, and that's a lot of my issue. But
Right.
But it really, thank you, because that really made it attainable, I guess, or it makes sense to me now. So thank you.
Yeah, it's basically like, in Buddhism, I think the concept of non-attachment, So if we're not attached to what we think we are or the world is, then we can create from that space.
My comment is, this whole conversation, I keep thinking about the hole in the donut reference.
Please,
in
will you read it?
Step 3. So I pulled out my book and I read it, and I know y'all are familiar with this, but what it says is, what will become of me if I keep turning my life over and my will over to the care of something or somebody else? What will become of me? I'll look like the hole in the donut. This, of course, is the process by which instinct and logic always seek to bolster ego and so frustrate spiritual development. So that ties in beautifully with what we talked about all day about the ego, and what I hear you saying, tying what y'all said in with what this is saying, is that nothingness is the way to spiritual development, which I say yes, because that's what drove me into the rooms. I had exhausted myself, and I was down to nothing. I was broke down. I was teachable, and I was ready to grasp onto any log coming down the stream because I was going down. So out of that nothingness, I was able to receive something of value.
That's why Jerry often says, if you can't help somebody up, for God's sakes, love them enough to help them down. It's the only chance they got. They're going to die anyway. So we sometimes need to help people find that place of nothingness. Sometimes that's the kindest thing we can do. Although we don't like to do that because we're codependents. We'd rather kill them. It's easier.
I just have an observation.
And us.
Isn't it funny that we're using all these words to explain nothing?
Yeah.
That's why we started with, we're just going to sit here for an hour.
And it's so funny because if you work really hard at trying to get to nothing, you're not going to get to nothing.
No. You just have to create
so
a space for nothing to be there.
It's just like, you're just not going to get there. Lord knows I've tried that too many times.
The steps get us to nothing. If we just take the actions, right? Just do the next right step with your sponsor, not trying to do it yourself. You will get to what we're talking about here, and you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
Nothing's always there. It's just covered over.
It's covered over.
With something.
Yeah. Yeah, and it does work. Doesn't it work, though? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we've gone over time. Thank you guys so much for
Thank you for staying.
contributing.